Hey guys, I want to talk about two things here. I just watched Kyle Kalinske talking about this fake culture, and I've talked about it before. And he was talking specifically about what do the people in the streets really want, and how we need to have a clear, uh, we need to have a list of intent. We need to have a clear intention to where we want these movements to go, the protests to go. Kyle made a really great point, and that is they'll defang it. They'll defang the movements. They'll twist them, and they'll pervert them. If and I said this before. I said, what do black people really want? What do you want? You just want to legalize marijuana? You just want to tamp down on police brutality? We're about to go into a depression, guys. We couldn't even get them to take 10% from the military budget. So I get what Kyle is saying. Like, I think there was a Chevron email that went out that said, while we are letting people go, we're downsizing, we're also making it more inclusive for gay people and people like that. It means nothing. Putting there's, like I said, they're making more corporations in the military industrial complex are run by females. This stuff doesn't mean anything. There's no value to it. I'm a black man, and Kyle is, I believe, he's Caucasian, New York. We have a different perspective. I will say, when the military stood up to Trump, that was a big deal to me. Look, give you context. He was talking about them taking the Confederate names off the military bases and the Confederate flag, and how we'll go crazy over that, and we'll not acknowledge what the American military is doing. We'll not acknowledge things that are more important. I acknowledge that. I agree with them on that. But I will say this. I think that we've watched a major shift in the American military. I think that I know you've had people going back to the late 80s, early 90s that were active duty, that were talking about how they're open white supremacists, open militants, and they kept their jobs in the military, even, with the racism. So the fact that the military is saying that, we are not going to have a Confederate flag up, we're not going to do those kind of things, is a massive shift. Now, I understand it's also trying to be, open to the recruits of this new generation, the millennial, the X generation. When we had those events that took place at the White House, where Trump ordered those Capitol Police, other police, to just totally abuse those peaceful protesters, and he had his general come out there in the army fatigue, which you're not supposed to do. And then after the fact, someone, I think, is undersecretary to the Secretary of Defense, he resigned. He said it was wrong. We saw Milley, that's the general that was out there, actually say he should not have been in camouflage. He should not have worn camouflage. That was stepping away from Trump. And we watched all of these retired generals say that, hey, we respect the right to protest, and we're not going to get in that. When that happened, I don't know about you, I breathed a sigh of relief. Because we need to know that at this time, with this president, that the military are not going to be stooges. Because here's the trick of the matter. We've seen this over and over and over, that white supremacists are doing things to foment violence. We've seen that. You've seen it. We know about this. If they put military out in the streets, even if it was for real protest, real violence, all it takes is somebody to fire a shot. All it takes is somebody to set off some fireworks or something and make people think it's real guns, and someone gets massacred. And now the military steps up. Now people are in the streets armed. This country is a tinderbox. And the fact the military stepped away from Trump's militant posture towards protesters, to me, was a win. Like I said, Kyle is a Caucasian. I think he's an Italian. Well, Ski is Polish, right? European, whatever. So he doesn't get that. He doesn't understand that. But for me, that was a big deal. And then the fact that after now they're saying if you're in Washington D.C. and you're a Marine or you're Navy, you're not even allowed to wear camouflage. That's like they're like, wow. And then they say we're gonna ban the Confederate flags, and then they say we're gonna take these Confederate names off of the bases. I would say in the totality of things, not just that by itself, in the totality, that was a major shift against fascism. Things are still bad. And there still may be a depression, there may be a second wave. But the fact that the military either is aware of consciously or passively is conscious of it and is like, hey, we don't want this. To me, they give me a breath of fresh air. I don't know about you. To me. So I disagree with Kyle on that, but I acknowledge his points that he made in that video that, yeah, they give us stuff that, like he said in the video, that, hey, I hear they're hiring a transgender prison guard at Guantanamo Bay. Well, that doesn't, to waterboard people, that doesn't change the fact of what that individual is doing. You understand? And I get that. Unfortunately, a lot of us, we don't get that. We're so busy fighting for equality that when it comes, we're not sniffing around looking at the big picture. We take it. We reach up and we grab the brass ring, even if it's not really brass. Moving on. I read something earlier, and I'm going somewhere with this. They were talking about how evidently polls, and I'm just going to use Germany as an example, over time, the polls have become more and more positive towards the idea of gay marriage. And I think I was reading something about the military, and they were talking about how I guess they hadn't legalized at the point that, anyway, they were showing how, I think, like in 2015, it was like 80% supported gay marriage. And in 17 or 18, I think, it's like 80% of the country supported gay marriage. And I thought about something. I thought about how, America's way behind, but I thought about how, basically, when you get to over 3/4 of the country supporting gay marriage or supporting gay people, that means no matter how far right you are, if you are going to play in that political ball game, you can't go out there yelling faggot. You can't go out there using, the broad brushes that have been used in the past to deal with gay people, which is to say gay people run around here promiscuously, or they run around with no clothes on, all that kind of shit. Bullshit. I think that I'm going somewhere with this. I thought about the Republican Party in America. And I thought about how, when you look at the Republican Party in America, they run off of that. They run off of the homosexuals, that people are trying to legalize pedophilia. They run off of the communists. They run off of illegals taking over. They run off of, it's just fear politics. It's fear for scared white people who live in these little communities that don't know anything. And it works with them. And I thought about how, because we're always talking about the Republican Party, oh, they're losing power as well as legitimacy to the wider demographics, the wider population at large there. Steve King, people like that, how they're out of touch. And Tom Cotton coming out. My thing is, one day, all the dog whistles either won't work or will be significantly less powerful than they are now. They'll have less pull. They'll have less damage. with their use. I'm talking about, you know, to gay people, like what you see with this pandemic. You see them talking about. Um, I call this the class war because Trump uses this all the time. When they were talking about opening, you need to open churches, and a reporter was like, "Why you need to open churches?" And this lady, McEnany, whatever it is, she said, "Oh well, I knew you guys would be against reopening churches." What? He's asking a legitimate question. I don't think liquor stores should be open. I don't think, and our governor of North Carolina, Roy Cooper, he has closed them. I think a lot of this stuff shouldn't be open. That's my belief. But I don't drink either. But that doesn't have any standing. There's people here who drink who will be like, "Well, that's because you don't drink." Yeah, but the science is still the science. It shouldn't matter whether I drink or I don't drink in recognizing the nature of a pandemic, the nature of where this pandemic is going, and all that. So that's that using religion as a weapon. That anytime you mention religion and ask something about it, I hate religion. I hate God. Right? That means I must somehow hate God because I'm asking you a question. So, one day, the gay stuff, the using religion as a weapon, this insane nationalism, this idea that some poor person is taking your jobs. Nobody can steal a fucking job. I shouldn't have to explain this. No, what happens is people like me stand up and say we deserve certain rights and our lives matter. And so you say, well, I'll take my business somewhere where I can abuse the workers where they have no rights. That's what happens. They don't steal jobs. They get raped. They get victimized. When I stand up, my people stand up and say, hey, no more. We're not being victimized anymore. And it's almost like to conservatives, that's appropriate. That as a worker, you're supposed to be abused. You're what? You know what I mean? I realized that the work with the labor movement, and I've talked about how, the sweatshops and things like that, how people will say, oh, well, see, you don't need unions because, things have gotten so much better. You don't have those things anymore. Yes, because people like me fought for that. Thank you, Eugene Debs. People that you called socialists so long ago fought and were beaten and shot and killed to give me those rights, to give me an 80-hour work week, to give me unemployment. Conservatives didn't just say, oh, well, you know what? Let's stop abusing blacks and let's stop discriminating against people. No. People knew what asbestos was and they kept using it. That's how you got OSHA. Yeah. Clean Water Act. Clean Air. Yeah. The MSDS papers, data papers, to where if there's anything in that factory that's bad for you, they have to have a book and they have to show you every chemical used in that warehouse and have to explain to you how that's bad for your health. People like them, socialists, fought for that. Conservatives didn't do that. That's not your game. They don't do that. Conservatives have no problem exposing their workers to death and to destruction. They have no problem with that. I used to look at jobs down there in Texas and stuff. Those working on the oil fields and stuff. And then, I would hear stories about people who were making good money and stuff like that. And they were working at a factory where something was kept open. And the bosses knew it, and they ended up getting sick and losing all that money. And they couldn't do anything about it. That's what happens in those kind of states where the employers got all the power. That's what happens. You get victimized. Your life doesn't matter. I'm all for Black Lives Matter, but I'm more concerned about the rights of the worker. And it worries me sometimes that I think that as things have gotten better, because of those freedoms, those protections, that workers are like, well, we'd rather have the money than protections, and they have forgotten the sacrifices and the struggle of the labor movement, how it all began, what International Workers of the World were all about. It wasn't just about money. It was about unsafe working environments. It was about abuse of workers. It was about you not having rights. That's what it was about. And it's the same thing with the racist stuff, that if there's no racism, why can't black be conservatives? You know, and you have your Kanye West, you have your, what's the woman's name? You have your Candace Owens, you have those type of characters because you have forgotten about what the struggle was all about, because you're not fighting anymore. There's no one out here in the streets calling you an N-word, and if they are, they're probably, they don't have any power over you. Even if someone on the job calls you that, they probably don't have any power over you. I think that's sad. You know, sounds like we are becoming white. We don't have, you know, I've talked about how, you know, there's books about how the Irish became white, how the Italians became white, because when they came to New York, they weren't liked by white people. And there was some of the same stuff used with the Mexicans used on them. They're taking over. Oh, there goes the neighborhood. That kind of stuff. And we're still being beaten. We're still being shot. We're still being abused. We're still being victimized. We're still being dealt with in unjust ways by the establishment. But the fact that it's not uniform, the fact that it's not so in your face, you have your Candace Owens. You have people like that. So, anyway, it just came to my mind that, you know, one day Republican Party will lose those things, and then what will they do? What will they do? Because we already see that happening. Maybe not quite 80% like Germany. They're a lot more enlightened and progressive than we are. They're not fighting for the right to keep guns and this narrative of going to war with the military, going to war with the government. It's, you know, they're much more progressive and enlightened. But one day that will happen. Maybe it's already happening. The homophobia and so that's not. I've come to figure that those people aren't very educated, and that they just need somebody to, you know, they need somebody to feel better over. Anyway, peace out.